Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer you this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. It is titled Tending to and Being Tended by the Tree of Life. I found myself in Dunham Massey once again the other day. It was absolutely siling it down with rain. So I took shelter for a little while under one of the great trees there. As I did, I reflected on the week that had gone by. It had begun by attending the funeral of my friend's young wife. They had married just a few days before she succumbed to cancer. It was a beautiful service, a wonderful celebration of Hannah's life. As I sheltered, I was filled with deep grief and sadness for my cousin Cheryl, who is still somehow with us. No, still with us at least at the time I'm recording this. It was her birthday on Friday. She turned 42. I'm so glad she was able to make it to her birthday. It was a hope and a dream. And there are many other sadnesses around too. My heart feels broken, certainly very tender at the moment. As I stood there sheltering, though, protected by this great, great tree, Barbara, a lovely member of the Durham Road Chapel, one of the congregations I serve, she came running past. She saw me. She stopped for a while. She was concerned. We chatted. And then she carried on running, and I returned to life itself. It's really funny, actually. I keep bumping into Barbara several times over the last couple of weeks, actually. She's a wonderfully deep-hearted, caring woman. Wonderful, wonderful human being. I carried on walking in the pouring rain, and a wonderful poem came to me as I did so. It's called I Go Among Trees by Wendell Berry. It was singing in my heart. So here is I Go Among Trees by Wendell Berry. I go among trees and sit still. All my stirring becomes quiet, around me like circles on water. My tasks lie in their places, where I left them, asleep like cattle. Then what is afraid of me comes and lives a while in my sight. What it fears in me leaves me, the fear of me leaves it. It sings, and I hear its song. Then what I am afraid of comes. I live for a while in its sight. What I fear in it leaves it. And the fear of it leaves me. It sings, and I hear its song. After days of labour, mute in my consternations, I hear my song at last, and I sing it. As we sing, the day turns, the trees move. I sing my song. As I walked on, I felt some of the fears in me leave me, and I found myself singing some familiar songs. I've been singing a lot recently, so many, many songs. I found myself singing songs to life itself. Not always happy songs, by the way. Some melancholy, some sad, some grief-filled, but some joyful too. As I sing my songs, I feel I'm being held by the tree of life, a celebration of life in the midst of love and loss and grief. I thought of the Jewish toast, Lashem, Lashem, to life. Sorry if that's not how it's pronounced. I'm a Gentile. Lashem, to life. Don't we all tend the tree of life? And don't we all shelter under that tree too? Chaim. I love the symbolism of the tree of life. It is beautifully universal. It represents such a nurturing love. I think in our secular age we have lost some of the power and deep meaning of symbols. I have a growing appreciation for the old symbols, for the old symbols reveal deep truths that are sometimes hidden by the rational mind, that words alone do not reveal. The mythologist Joseph Campbell taught that certain images and pictures invite the eye not to merely rush along, but to rest a while and dwell within the revelation that can be found by looking deeply into them. I was thinking of this as I passed all those beautiful trees, so strong and sturdy, offering shelter from the rain. They are a toast to life itself. The tree is the symbol of life, and this is why the tree of life is a universal symbol. L'chaim, to life, to life. The trees have much to teach us. My namesake and American colleague, the Reverend Greta W. Crosby, recognizes this in her piece, Tree and Jubilee. She describes a silent, non-judgmental presence that the trees offer to her, something we humans cannot give no matter how well we may think we are listening, actually. The trees, they simply stand there erect and open, never shrinking away, never rejecting, offering unconditional love and acceptance. In her piece, she wrote, I have long had a sense of fellowship with trees. Since I was a child, I have sought their company from time to time because I like the way I feel in their presence. I enjoy their beauty, but it is more than that. I used the word presence in a very strong sense. I felt their presence as living things, and in that presence I often feel relaxed and centered, peaceful, restored to inner equilibrium. She continues, for many of us, life is the meaning of the tree, but for me, perhaps the greatest thing about the tree is its silence. Whatever the tree says to us, whatever its answers to our questing, the tree gives its message without words. And the tree bears with us well. It does not judge. It does not react to our anxieties. It does not run after us. It just stands there with open arms. It just offers itself to us. The tree, to me, is the ultimate symbol of life. We all tend and nurture the tree of life, l'chaim, to life, to life. The tree of life is a beautiful and universal symbol. It can be found in so many of the world's religious traditions. The ancient Chinese, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Sumerians all had a tree of life symbol. There is Yggdrasil, the Norse tree of life, and Et HaHayim of the Kabbalistic Jews. The Baha'is speak of it, and the Christians of all kinds speak of the tree of life with healing leaves found in the book of the Revelations. The book of Genesis tells of two trees, the tree of knowledge, which is the tree of good and evil, and the tree of life, the tree of immortality. Now, of course, in the second book of Genesis, they ate the forbidden fruit, from the tree of knowledge. And as the result, Adam and Eve are banished from paradise. They are banished from life, I suspect. Interesting. So as I continued to wander around Dunham, I recalled a conversation I'd had there a few days earlier, on almost exactly the same spot, actually, with a really interesting friend. And we were talking about many things, and one of the things we talked about was this sense of wrongness that we humans can feel at times. Where on earth does it come from? A feeling we both shared, and something sadly so many folks seem to share, at least folk who talk to me do anyway. Where does this rejection of life come from? Now, we talked about the foundational stories in Genesis, that my friend has a real keen interest in this, actually. And of course, it's all mythos. It's not history to be argued over. It's not about whether it's right or wrong or factually accurate. When people talk about myth as a lie, they misunderstood the meaning. They misunderstand what mythos is, actually. Mythos is universal truth. The question to ask is, does this speak to a deeper truth that we can find in ourselves? And does it speak throughout human history, throughout time? Is it an eternal truth? Now, of course, many people reject the Bible as outdated, as not only inaccurate, actually, but downright destructive, a dangerous book or collection of books. I don't quite see it that way. I think there is so much to engage with still, but I engage with it in a symbolic sense, not as fact or history. I explained to my friend how the Bible actually begins not with original sin, but with original blessing. In the first chapter of the first book, Genesis, God looked at his creation and saw that it was good. He saw that life is a good thing, that we are formed from good, and therefore we are not wrong. There is no original sin. Actually, what you find is original blessing. That blessing is actually formational. That life is formed from goodness. The concept of original sin was actually a creation of the later church, mainly from Augustine, and I would say from his own self-loathing at times. He wrote some beautiful things, but he wrote some less than beautiful things too. I believe it came from his own self-loathing, which I believe comes from his own rejection of his own original blessing. Something I can really relate to at times, actually, as so many people do. Oh, I can relate to Augustine quite well. I'm not suggesting I can write great treatises like him. I'm talking about that aspect. You see, the trouble begins in the second creation story, in the Garden of Eden. That said, if we look at this symbolically rather than literally, there is so much beautiful mythos to be unearthed here too. The original human Adam, Adamak, means born from the earth. The human, the humus, humility, all share the same linguistic root. They are born from the earth. They are not God, but they are finite. We are limited. We are limited, but we are beautiful. It's our finiteness that makes our lives so precious and beautiful. Yes, we are born, but we also die. This is life. I was thinking of this yesterday as I scattered the ashes of a wonderful member, a wonderful woman who died tragically. Originally, we enjoy paradise, the fruits of life. There is no shame, no sense of wrongness, no rejection of our lives, no destruction of ourselves, no destruction of others. We simply enjoy paradise. But there's more to us than that. We want more. We seek more. Of course, in this aspect of ourselves is where all creativity seems to be born. But it's also, it seems, where all trouble is born too. And you know what? We are the only aspect of created life, I believe, that experiences this sense of dissatisfaction. We want more. I want more. So we eat the forbidden fruit. We want the knowledge when we suffer hubris, what the ancient Greeks all talked about. And in seeking in hubris, we lose the beautiful gift of innocence. We are cast out by a sense of shame, especially a sense of shame about our own humanity. we leave paradise. But that's not the end of the story. All stories are circular. The circle is a symbol of all life, and it's a symbol of all religion, and it's a symbol of all spirituality. We come full circle. We can return to love, return to blessing. But the journey back is long and arduous, and we don't go anywhere. To quote Meister Eckhart, it could be one of 1 inch, but a depth beyond any depth, a layer upon any layer. We return home, we go full circle, we don't go back on ourselves. We come home with treasure to share. This is the classic heroic journey. This is the truth of every great story, the universal mythos. The key is to return home to love. But that comes in later stories. I often think of the prodigal son here, actually, with the boy returning home to the open arms of his father, who greets him halfway, celebrates his return, and embraces his son with a kiss, with an act of pure love. Can there be anything more intimate than that? It seems to me there's nothing considered wrong in this child born of love. And yet, so often we do not feel we are formed from love. Isn't that just so sad? Now, of course, this is only my view of mythos, and it's certainly not an orthodox view in any way, shape, or form, but I don't claim to be very orthodox in anything. I am a nonconformist in the real sense of the word. My interpretation, though, is life affirming. My interpretation celebrates life, and I don't think the traditional view does. As Joseph Campbell said, that great mythologist Joseph Campbell said about the more orthodox interpretation, that it is a refusal, actually, to affirm life. Life is seen as corrupt. It sees the serpent as the symbol that brought sin into the world, and woman as the figure who handed the apple to man. My friend was explaining this, was sharing about this as we walked around Dunham Massey the other day. As Campbell says himself, this identification of the woman with sin, of the serpent with sin, and thus of life with sin is the twist that's been given to the whole story in the biblical myth and the doctrine of the fall. Campbell continues, I do not know of it, the idea of woman as sinner in other mythologies elsewhere. And this is the problem with the concept of original sin. The traditional understanding sees life as the problem, especially human life, and it sees the female, the bringer of life, as the root of the trouble. How long have we all suffered as the result of this rejection of life and this rejection of woman as central to this problem? They bring life, and this life is feared, and they are feared more as the bringer and the bearer of life. Hence the aspect of the story. And you know what? It's not gone away. We see it as clearly today. Just look at America right now. Another part. Look here, actually. It's not gone away. In fact, in recent years, I think the trouble is coming back. It's intensifying. And for me, the problem stems from this fear of life itself. Surely life is good. And maybe the solution is the tree of life. The tree of life that nurtures us if we tend to it. And the tree of life that will offer us shelter. To life. The problem is we see life, so many of the spiritual traditions see life as something less than what will follow in the spiritual aspect. Or, to be entirely secular, people see life as being entirely meaningless, and therefore anything goes. Any wrong or harm or pain, any suffering is acceptable if you don't have a reverence for life itself. Well, I don't only have a reverence, I toast life. Life is where the spirit of life through our being, and yet we reject life. But we can go back to the tree of life. There is an eternal wisdom in the trees, you know. They don't worry about these things. The Buddha gained enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree. The tree blessed him, and as it blessed him, it showered him with blossom. And if you look at ancient Christian imagery, Jesus is crucified on what's called the holy root, which is the tree of life, which is the second tree in the Garden of Eden. And from this life comes again classic mythos. And not only does life come, this fruit that can sustain us comes too. This is classic mythos. As Joseph Campbell highlighted, man was expelled from the garden because he ate from the first tree, the tree of knowledge. The garden was the place of unity, of non-duality. Non-duality of male and female, non-duality of man and God, non-duality of good and evil. The tree of immortal life brings us back to paradise, to unity, to life itself, when two become one. And this is identical to the tree that the Buddha sits under. The tree of life is the universal symbol of life itself. Wahayam, to life, to life. But sadly, so many folk, it seems, are afraid of life, just as afraid of life as we are of death. It seems to me that these ancient stories, in their essence at least, what's really beneath the story, are trying to teach that death is in life as life is in death. This is the story of existence of which we are all a part of. And yet, for some reason, we reject life in so many ways. I have. We are frightened, I suppose, of being cast out of it. So what do? We crucify life, we torture life, we persecute, we distrust, we destroy, we fear our own humanity and mortality. We say there's no good in us, and there's no good in the other, and life is not good at all. And that's not what the mythos says. He looked at the creation, and he saw that it was good, very good indeed. It doesn't have to be this way. We are born from original blessing, original goodness. This is our natural state that too often we lose sight of. We are all formed from the tree of life, the tree of renewal, the tree of rebirth, and we need to recognize this. Sometimes this comes when we lose something or someone precious to us. Somehow in this suffering, we turn back home again, though. It brings us back home. We return to paradise. We find wholeness, oneness once again. We recognize our own sacredness and we recognize the sacredness of others. We return to the tree of life and we tend to the tree of life as the tree of life tends to us. Just as it did that rainy morning as I sought shelter under that tree in Dunham Massey. So I went full circle again. May we know this wisdom and may we bring it to life through our very human being. Lahayam, to life, to life. You're given it. It's the ultimate grace is life, the ultimate free gift. It's given. We do nothing to deserve it. Well, I'm going to end this little piece with a little bit of Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver's The Summer Day. And you know what? Mary has been singing in my heart quite a lot these last few days. The Summer Day by Mary Oliver. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to idle and be blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, tell me, tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, tell me, tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. Tell me. Amen. I'm going to end this devotion with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more. Gosh, life needs our blessing. Life is a blessing, but we need to be blessings to life too. And we can all bless. We bless when we give ourselves fully to life. So let's be a branch of the tree of life. Our eyes and our minds turn toward the ordinary. Leaving this space made sacred by our presence, take with you at least some seed of understanding, hope, and courage, and drop it into the confusion of the world. Nourish the seed that it might grow as a tree of life, giving shelter to the weary and hope to the despairing. Be yourself a branch of the tree of life. Carry its love. Carry this love with us, this love of life, born from goodness. May we recognize this in ourselves and in others, and may we carry this love with us, this love of life, and may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, and in all that we do.